Humanity has learned to edit the genome, erasing birth defects before a child is even born. We've mastered landing multi-ton rocket stages on floating platforms in a raging ocean. Yet every evening, billions of people perform the same strange ritual. They pop open a bottle, pour a dark, tannic liquid into a crystal glass, and drink it down, genuinely believing they're treating themselves, extending their lives, protecting their hearts. This is arguably the most successful and expensive statistical scam of the 20th century, and humanity is still paying for it with millions of lives every year. Right now, beneath your ribcage, a living pump the size of your fist is working. It's pushing blood through a complex network of vessels stretching 100,000 kilometers. That's enough flexible tubing to wrap around the Earth's equator 2.5 times. Everything depends on a delicate protective layer of cells, just fractions of a micron thick. But take that first sip, and an invisible chemical storm slams through the system. The skin on your face flushes warmly, surface blood vessels dilate, the illusion of relaxation. Meanwhile, the coronary arteries feeding your heart itself quietly constrict in a spasm. Blood flow to the heart muscle drops by 12%. This isn't rest, it's controlled suffocation. For decades, we've been told that quality red wine is an elixir of longevity. We were lied to, boldly, pragmatically, and for very big money. This video is a deep scientific excavation. We're going to peel away 6 layers of this beautiful legend and hit the bottom. We'll break down the statistical garbage from which the famous French paradox was born. We'll see how ethanol dissolves the protective nanolayer of your arteries. We'll find out why the resveratrol invented by marketers requires you to drink 1,000 liters of Cabernet every day. And we'll watch how silent scarring turns a healthy person's heart into a flabby, stretched-out bag. At the end, we'll hit the real safe dose of alcohol. And trust me, this number is going to make you mad. Before we start the descent, hit subscribe. One less myth in your life. Every Friday, supermarket shelves turn into an altar of collective self-deception. You stand there facing neat rows of bottles, staring at beautiful labels with pictures of ancient castles, vineyards, and family crests. A bottle of full-bodied Bordeaux or dry Chianti doesn't feel like just a purchase. It's a ticket into an exclusive club of healthy, sophisticated hedonists. You pick up that wine from the shelf with a pleasant feeling that you're making a smart, adult choice. Unlike the people buying cheap beer or hard liquor, you're buying health packed in dark glass. This ritual is so deeply embedded in our culture, it feels like a natural law. But this law has a specific birthday, an author's name, and a price we pay every single day. The event happened on November 17, 1991. That evening, millions of Americans settled in front of their TVs to watch the popular show 60 Minutes. Host Morley Safer, holding a glass of red wine, said something that flipped the global alcohol industry on its head. He told a stunned audience that the French, despite their love of butter, rich cheeses, and fatty meats, suffer heart attacks at 2.5 times the rate of Americans. The explanation was simple to the point of genius. It was all because of red wine. It supposedly neutralized cholesterol and kept arteries clean. The effect of that TV episode exceeded the wildest expectations of any marketer. The very next morning, America lost its mind. Red wine sales in the United States skyrocketed 40% in just a few weeks. Wineries in Bordeaux and Tuscany couldn't ship cases fast enough. Entire empires were built on this wave. Cardiologists started giving interviews, recommending a glass with dinner as a preventive measure. The myth of the French paradox officially became part of pop culture. The author of this theory was a French researcher named Serge Renaud. He honestly documented the difference in cardiovascular disease mortality rates, but he made a glaring mistake, what respectable scientific circles call a spurious correlation. Renaud simply connected 2 dots. The French drink wine, and the French die of heart attacks less often. And he completely ignored the huge gap between them. That gap was made up of 12.5 other factors the scientist chose to overlook in his work. First, the average French person in the 1990s consumed nearly 400 grams more fresh vegetables and fruit per day than the average American. Second, the traditional French portion of meat was more than half the size of those giant American steaks. The French barely touched industrial fast food, loaded with trans fats. They walked a lot more, simply because their cities weren't designed around endless highway interchanges. But selling vegetables and walking is boring and unprofitable. Selling a romantic legend about a bottle of wine with dinner? That's a goldmine. The funniest part came later. In 1999, British epidemiologists decided to thoroughly recheck the very same French mortality statistics that Serge Wanaud had relied on. The results were almost comical. It turned out that French doctors had been systematically falsifying data for decades. When a patient died of a classic heart attack, death certificates often listed sudden death of unknown origin. The French medical bureaucracy simply coded cardiac events differently to keep their numbers clean. Heart attacks were just as common in reality. They were just recorded differently. The paradox turned out to be a plain old statistical mirage. But the marketing wheel was already unstoppable. The wine industry realized that science-y myths bring in billions. Hundreds of millions of dollars poured into funding so-called independent studies. Articles about the benefits of moderate drinking started popping up in the press, one after another. Charts showed a beautiful curve. People who have 1 or 2 drinks a day live longer than total teetotalers. That curve still hangs on the walls of some old-school doctors' offices. But if you look under the hood of those studies, you find a cynical juggling of numbers. The real trick was in who the authors of these studies put into the non-drinking group for comparison. They just threw everyone under the same label, abstainers. This automatically included former heavy alcoholics with wrecked livers and worn-out hearts. They also lumped in people with severe congenital diseases, late-stage diabetics, and cancer patients for whom alcohol was physically out of the question. Naturally, this group of seriously ill people died far more often and much faster. Against that backdrop, any relatively healthy person sipping their glass of Cabernet with a good meal looked like a glowing, long liver. That's not science. It's statistical fraud dressed up in a prestigious medical gown. The reality is radically different from the glossy brochures. Let's set aside the fancy bouquets and notes of leather and cherry in your glass for a moment. From a physiological standpoint, what we have is an aqueous solution of a monohydric alcohol. Ethanol is a remarkable molecule. It's amphiphilic. That means alcohol dissolves equally well in both water and fats. For it, there are no closed doors in our body. It crosses any cell membrane as easily as a knife slides through warm butter. Let's start a mental stopwatch and track where this molecule goes in real time, minute by minute. Minute 1. You take your first sip. The liquid touches the mucous membrane of your mouth and goes down into your stomach. Right here, something happens that doesn't with regular food. Ethanol doesn't need to be digested. About 20% of the alcohol is absorbed directly through the stomach wall, straight into the bloodstream. The rest rushes into the small intestine and gets absorbed there within minutes. Alcohol doesn't wait its turn. It hacks into the body's nutrient distribution system instantly. Minute 5. The first ethanol molecules have already completed their first lap through your circulatory system. They pass through the coronary arteries, those thin vessels that supply oxygen to the heart muscle itself, the myocardium. Right here, alcohol begins its quiet but destructive work. Minute 10. The skin on your face flushes. A pleasant, gentle warmth spreads through your body. The muscles in your shoulders relax. In cardiology back in the last century, this effect was considered beneficial. Doctors thought, if peripheral blood vessels are dilated, then the heart must have an easier time pumping blood. That's a deep misconception. Only the vessels on the surface of your body dilate: skin, subcutaneous tissue, limbs. But the coronary vessels behave in exactly the opposite way. They spasm. On the outside, you feel warm and cozy. On the inside, just a few centimeters beneath your ribs, your heart suddenly shifts into oxygen starvation mode. Half a glass of dry wine reduces blood flow in the coronary arteries by an average of 8 to 12%. For a young person with no chronic conditions, that goes unnoticed. But if there's already a first, undiagnosed atherosclerotic plaque hiding in your vessels, that spasm can become the trigger for an acute angina attack, right there at the dinner table. At the nanoscale, this process looks even more terrifying. The inner surface of every single one of your 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels is lined with a protective layer, the endothelial glycocalyx. Picture it as a dense, microscopic lawn of delicate algae. These strands sway with each pulse wave, preventing red blood cells from scraping against the fragile vessel wall. Ethanol, by its physical nature, is a surfactant. In simple terms, it's a solvent, exactly the same kind you use to cut through grease on dirty dishes. Alcohol literally dissolves and burns away this protective lawn. The vessel is left exposed and defenseless. Blood cells start to grind directly against the artery walls, traumatizing them and triggering a cascade of micro-inflammations. Minute 20. The alcohol concentration in your blood hits its peak. Your liver kicks its enzyme defense into emergency mode. Alcohol dehydrogenase starts breaking down the ethanol. The byproduct of this reaction is acetaldehyde, and it's poison, 30 times more toxic than the alcohol itself. This toxin delivers a direct hit to the mitochondria, the power plants of your heart cells. Your heart cells start suffocating from lack of energy. To pump the same volume of blood with reduced power, the heart has to urgently rev up its pace. Your resting heart rate was 68 beats per minute. Now, it jumps to 82. 30 minutes later, it hits 90. You're still sitting in a comfy chair, having a casual conversation, but your heart is working as if you're jogging uphill with a heavy backpack on your shoulders. Minute 30. Your blood pressure does its first somersault. Alcohol has a biphasic effect on blood pressure, and this trap snaps shut on everyone who drinks in the evening. First, your pressure drops by 5 to 8 millimeters of mercury because of temporary dilation in the small skin vessels. You feel light and drowsy, but this effect lasts no more than an hour. Then, acetaldehyde forces your adrenal glands to dump a massive surge of adrenaline and noradrenaline into your bloodstream. Your vessels constrict sharply, your pressure skyrockets 15 to 25 millimeters above your normal reading, and this hypertensive storm will rage inside your body for 8 to 12 hours. You fall asleep peacefully in your bed, convinced that evening glass of wine is good for you. Meanwhile, your vascular system works through the night at extreme overload, teetering on the edge of a crisis. If you've made it this far and your brain hasn't boiled over yet, write the word chaos in the comments. I need to know who's ready to go with me all the way to the bottom of this abyss. To understand why the human body is even capable of processing this poison without dying from the very first drink, we'll have to take a leap into the past. And I'm not talking about ancient Greece with its cult of Dionysus, or medieval monks who first started distilling alcohol. We need to rewind the timeline back about 10 million years, to the late Miocene epoch. That's when a climatic drama played out on our planet that forever linked humanity's fate with ethanol. During this period, the climate in East Africa started shifting fast. Dense tropical rainforests gave way to dry, harsh savanna. There were fewer and fewer trees, and competition for resources among our ancient tree-dwelling hominid ancestors hit a breaking point. Food was critically scarce. The weaker species were doomed to starve to death among the withering branches. Survival demanded drastic moves, so our ancestors came down to the ground. It was a dangerous step. On the ground, large predators lurked. Predators you could no longer just hide from up in the trees. But the ground also offered a new, virtually untapped source of carbohydrates: overripe, fallen fruit. Wild yeast growing on the fruit's skin kicked off natural fermentation, turning the fruit's simple sugars into ethanol. By modern standards, the alcohol content in that windfall was tiny, anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5%. But for most mammals, even that dose was an impossible barrier. An ordinary animal that ate a handful of those fermented fruits would quickly lose coordination, pass out, or start behaving erratically. Out in the wild, a drunk monkey is basically a guaranteed meal for a saber-toothed tiger, so most animals avoided fermented fruit altogether. It was an evolutionary dead end, until a tiny, life-saving mutation occurred in our ancestors' genome. Researchers at the Foundation for Applied Molecular Evolution in the United States have pieced together exactly what happened. In a gene called ADH4, which is responsible for making one type of alcohol dehydrogenase, just one amino amino acid was swapped out. This random copying error boosted the rate at which our bodies break down ethanol by exactly 40 times. That mutation turned a deadly toxin into a source of extra calories. Our ancestors gained a unique food monopoly. They could safely eat what would knock other animals out cold. It was an emergency adaptation to extreme famine. The ADH4 mutation helped our species survive, but nature never intended for that backup mechanism to become part of our everyday life. Evolution assumed humans would only encounter ethanol occasionally, during dry spells, eating half-rotten fruit with an alcohol content of around 1%. No bars, no wine cellars, no distillation equipment were ever in evolution's plans. The gap between our ancient biology and modern consumption culture is enormous. Today, we walk into a store and buy a dry wine that's 12 to 14% alcohol. From a Paleolithic biology standpoint, one glass of that wine is the equivalent of wolfing down several buckets of rotting wild apples in one sitting. Our bodies simply were not designed for those concentrations. We're using a delicate emergency valve, built to save us from starvation, as a drain pipe for industrial solvent. And that system inevitably starts to fail in ways our ancestors out on the African savanna could never have imagined. The human brain is wired in a fascinating way. It's not enough for us to just indulge our weaknesses. We absolutely need to back them up with solid scientific evidence. We need an excuse. And the wine industry handed us that excuse, wrapped up in a fancy, science-y word, resveratrol. If you've ever tried searching online for articles about the health benefits of red wine, that name has haunted you on every scientific forum. This active compound is marketed as a miracle antioxidant, a fountain of youth, and a heart protector. Pharmacies sell capsules of it at inflated prices. But if you stack those flashy marketing claims against the cold, hard numbers from lab reports, that glossy pyramid crumbles to dust in an instant. The hype began back in 1997. In Professor John Pizzuto's lab in Illinois, they ran a simple experiment. Scientists dropped a concentrated solution of resveratrol onto a culture of tumor cells in a petri dish. The cells died. The press immediately ran with the story, touting it as a soon-to-be victory over disease. What journalists conveniently forgot to mention was that you can kill cancer cells in a petri dish with plain old soap or bleach. That doesn't mean you should start drinking bleach to stay healthy. 6 years later, in 2003, Harvard researcher David Sinclair poured fuel on the fire. He published a study claiming resveratrol activates special proteins called sirtuins, which are responsible for repairing damaged cells and promoting longevity. Sinclair fed regular brewer's yeast resveratrol, and they lived 70% longer than usual. Then, they repeated the experiment with lab mice. The rodents getting the miracle molecule didn't just live longer, they thrived on a super fatty diet without getting fat and showed remarkable endurance. It was a triumph. Headlines around the world declared the anti-aging pill had been found. Supplement manufacturers were rubbing their hands together, and wine industry associations launched aggressive ad campaigns. Drink red wine. It contains the molecule of youth. There was just one systematic flaw in this beautiful story. No one in the press bothered to compare the dosages. In Sinclair's experiments, the mice were given resveratrol at a rate of 22 milligrams per kilogram of body weight per day. If we scale that dose up to an average adult human, accounting for differences in metabolism, we'd need to take anywhere from 150 milligrams to 1.5 grams of pure resveratrol every single day. Now let's look at what's actually in wine. A single glass of quality dry red wine contains, on average, about 1 milligram of resveratrol. Let's do the math. To get the same dose that extended the lives of those Harvard mice, a human would have to drink between 150 and 1,500 glasses of wine every day. That's roughly 150 liters of alcohol-containing liquid per day. No weekends off. Obviously, anyone crazy enough to try that experiment would die from acute ethanol poisoning and liver failure long before the resveratrol ever had a chance to reach their cells. Pharma giants quickly figured out this trick. In 2008, GlaxoSmithKline bought a biotech company called Sirtris for a mind-blowing $720 million. It belonged to none other than David Sinclair. The corporation planned to create the first official anti-aging medication based on resveratrol. The company expected to make billions from it. But 2 years later, large-scale clinical trials on real people crashed and burned. In patients with type 2 diabetes, high doses of resveratrol showed absolutely no effect on insulin sensitivity or blood vessel health. It didn't slow the progression of the disease. In patients with metabolic syndrome, results fluctuated within the range of statistical error. Meanwhile, some seriously nasty side effects showed up. High doses of resveratrol caused severe nausea, relentless diarrhea, and in some patients led to serious kidney damage. In 2010, GlaxoSmithKline quietly pulled the plug on all research. By 2013, Sertris was completely shut down. The pharma giant simply wrote off $750 million as a loss. The reason for this failure lies in basic human biology. Our body has terrible bioavailability for resveratrol. When taken orally, less than 0.5% of it gets absorbed. Our liver destroys this molecule in 15 minutes, breaking it down into inactive metabolites. Virtually nothing reaches the heart muscle or blood vessels. Mice have different metabolism. They break it down slowly. What worked perfectly in rodents turned out to be absolutely useless junk in the human body. But you won't see that on the supplement bottles in pharmacies. They still proudly claim, activates longevity genes, protects the heart. The resveratrol myth keeps living its own life, bringing massive profits to supplement makers and winemakers. It's the perfect marketing anchor. It lets them sell us alcohol disguised as healthcare. Most cardiac catastrophes play out in absolute silence. Our heart is an incredibly patient organ. It can't complain or signal pain at the first sign of damage, like a bruised finger or an infected tooth. The myocardium has very few pain receptors. Heart cells die in silence, not bothering their owner until the process reaches a dead end. And it's exactly this trait that makes regular, moderate alcohol consumption deadly dangerous. While you think you're in control, a slow anatomical transformation is going on inside your body. A healthy heart works like a well-tuned orchestra. The myocardium consists of billions of cardiomyocytes connected by special tight junctions called nexuses. Through them, an electrical impulse travels at lightning speed, making all muscle fibers contract in sync. This massive workload requires a constant flow of energy. The heart consumes more oxygen and nutrients than any other organ. Normally, its main fuel is fatty acids, which are broken down in mitochondria with the help of the coenzyme NAD+. But when ethanol enters your bloodstream on a regular basis, your liver and heart muscle divert all available NAD+ to neutralize the poison. The breakdown of fat comes to a complete halt. Unused fatty acids start piling up right inside your heart's working cells, stored as triglycerides. This process is called myocardial fatty degeneration, or cardiac steatosis. Your heart cells literally become clogged with fat from the inside, gasping for energy. Starved of fuel, the cardiomyocyte shrivels up and dies. And our bodies can't grow new heart cells. Instead, they just patch the hole with whatever's handy, inert, rigid collagen. It's a slow, silent process. Connective tissue can't contract or conduct electrical impulses. It acts as nothing but a dead patch. Picture gray lichen slowly, relentlessly covering the surface of a granite boulder, replacing a living ecosystem with lifeless stone. After 10 to 12 years of regular wine nights, a significant part of your heart muscle turns into a stiff web of scar tissue. To compensate for the lost workforce, the heart starts to stretch. The walls of the left ventricle thin out. What was once a dense, elastic muscular pump the size of your fist becomes a huge, flabby, stretched-out sac that just flops around in your chest cavity, barely managing to pump blood. In a healthy person, the left ventricle holds about 120 milliliters of blood. In the advanced stages of alcoholic cardiomyopathy, that volume balloons to 350 milliliters. Your heart triples in size, but it works 3 times worse. This diagnosis is insidiously deceptive. In the early stages, you could go in for your annual checkup, get a full blood panel, a routine EKG, and come out with perfect results. Blood pressure is normal. Cholesterol is excellent. So you pour yourself another glass to celebrate the good news. But your heart is already halfway to irreversible fibrosis. The first symptoms only show up once a critical mass of heart tissue has already died. You notice that climbing the stairs to the third floor suddenly leaves you gasping for air. You chalk it up to age or fatigue. By evening, your ankles start to swell so much that the elastic from your socks leaves deep marks on your skin. You blame it on the heat or eating too much salt. At night, you wake up with that sudden feeling that your heart is pounding up in your throat. You put it down to stress. That's typically when you finally go to the doctor, get an echocardiogram, and hear the verdict. Your ejection fraction has dropped to 30%. That means your heart is pumping only half as much blood into your vessels as it should. Your organs are starving for oxygen. The process has become irreversible. No medication can dissolve the scar tissue on your heart. Without quitting alcohol completely, half of these patients die within 4 years. But ethanol also has a fast, instant kill scenario that doesn't need decades to set up. In 1978, American cardiologist Philip Ettinger noticed a strange pattern. After weekends and holidays, emergency rooms would fill up with young, successful men between 30 and 50, all suffering from severe heart rhythm disturbances. They had no chronic heart disease, and they weren't on a bender. They'd just had a good night out at a work party or hanging with friends. Ettinger called this phenomenon holiday heart syndrome. The mechanism behind this syndrome is tied to the heart's electrical system. Normally, an electrical impulse starts in the sinoatrial node and travels smoothly through the conduction pathways. But ethanol and acetaldehyde severely disrupt the distribution of potassium, magnesium, and calcium ions in cell membranes. By 3 or 4 in the morning, when blood alcohol levels drop, a rebound phase kicks in. The adrenal glands flood the system with adrenaline, and calcium channels that were blocked by alcohol suddenly swing wide open. Inside the atrial cells, total chaos erupts. This calcium storm lights up hundreds of ectopic foci. The sinoatrial node loses control of the rhythm. The atria stop contracting in sync. Instead, they start quivering chaotically, fibrillating at rates up to 600 beats per minute. A person wakes up in the middle of the night with a violent jolt in their chest. Their pulse shoots up to 120, 150, or even 180 beats per minute. It's erratic, impossible to count. Cold, clammy sweat breaks out, along with an animal fear of death. The scariest part of atrial fibrillation isn't the pulse itself, it's what happens inside the left atrial appendage. When the atrium stops contracting normally and begins to quiver, blood pools and stagnates in that chamber. In that quiet backwater, a clot forms within hours. When the heart rhythm finally restores itself about a day later, the first powerful contraction launches that fresh clot into general circulation. Where the clot ends up is a lottery. If it heads upward, you get an ischemic stroke. A healthy 40-year-old man turns into a profoundly disabled person, with half his body paralyzed in a matter of seconds. If the clot goes to the lungs, it's instant death from a pulmonary embolism. If it lodges in a coronary artery, heart attack. And all of this from one fun evening that started with a toast to good health. A major meta-analysis published in 2014, which included data from 12,000 cases of atrial fibrillation, shows that every additional 12 grams of ethanol per day raises the risk of arrhythmia by 8%. 12 grams, that's less than 1 glass of wine. Someone who regularly drinks 2 glasses in the evening increases their arrhythmia risk by 16%. Someone who drinks 4 glasses increases it by 32%. And this isn't about alcoholics. These are completely average people. What's truly insidious is that the first episode of arrhythmia often resolves on its own. After a few hours, the rhythm returns to normal. The person tells themselves they just drank too much. They don't see a doctor, don't get a Holter monitor. But the clot in the atrial appendage is already waiting for its moment. Up to 20% of all ischemic strokes worldwide are caused by atrial fibrillation, and a huge chunk of those come from ordinary, occasional drinking in otherwise healthy people. We've talked about the heart and its electrical system, but there's one more element, the blood vessels. 300,000 kilometers of pipeline inside each of us. And this is where the biggest lie hides. We're told that alcohol widens blood vessels, thins the blood, and protects against stroke. The reality is the exact opposite. Ethanol is a powerful destroyer of the vascular wall and a trigger for hemorrhagic stroke, the kind where a vessel in the brain bursts and blood floods the tissue. Have some cognac, it'll widen your blood vessels. Millions of people repeat this phrase. The problem is, every single word in it is wrong. Blood vessels are living tissue. Their inner layer, the endothelium, in an adult, covers an area of about 700 square meters. That's an entire basketball court inside you. And it's a hormonal organ that produces nitric oxide to regulate tone and keeps blood from clotting. Every serving of alcohol is a chemical burn to that inner court.
Nitric oxide production drops.
6 to 8 hours after drinking, the vessel's ability to dilate decreases by 20 to 30%. Vessels become stiff, like plastic tubes. They respond to stress with spasms. According to research, consuming more than 30 grams of ethanol per day raises systolic pressure by 4 millimeters and diastolic by 2.5 units. Every 2 millimeters above normal increases the long-term risk of stroke by tens of %. The myth about blood thinning is also dangerous. Yes, in the first few hours, ethanol slightly reduces platelet clumping, but 12 to 24 hours later, a rebound phase kicks in. Blood clotting sharply increases above normal and lasts up to 48 hours. Platelets clump faster, fibrinogen is elevated. It's during this rebound effect that most heart attacks and strokes occur. The day after drinking. Hemorrhagic stroke kills half of patients within the first month. Alcohol is a powerful risk factor for this condition. Research from 2022 showed that regular consumption of just 105 grams of ethanol per week, that's one bottle of wine over 7 days, raises the risk of hemorrhagic stroke by 20 to 30%. Damaged endothelium plus nighttime blood pressure spikes plus clotting rebound. In a small artery in the brain, the vessel can't handle the pressure and ruptures. Then comes a coma, intensive care, or the morgue. The final nail in the coffin of the healthy glass of red wine myth was driven on August 23, 2018. That day, the journal The Lancet published an unprecedented large-scale study. Over 26 years, more than 500 leading scientists from 100 countries worked on it. They analyzed data on alcohol consumption and mortality in 195 countries worldwide. They examined nearly 700 data sources and 600 studies. The scientists consolidated absolutely all risk factors, from heart attacks and strokes to cancers, cirrhosis, pancreatitis, injuries, and suicides, into a single mathematical model. When all the graphs converged at one point, global medicine was in shock. The study's conclusion was brutally clear. There is no safe level of alcohol consumption. Any dose above absolute zero causes a net cumulative harm to the body. In tiny doses, alcohol may slightly lower the risk of ischemic heart disease in some narrow population groups, but this effect is completely outweighed by the sharp increase in the risk of cancers of the colon, esophagus, larynx, and breast. In January 2023, the World Health Organization officially laid this out in a special memorandum. Alcohol was classified as a Group 1 carcinogen, placing it right alongside asbestos, tobacco, arsenic, and formaldehyde. That means there's scientifically proven, direct cause and effect evidence linking ethanol consumption to cancer development. There's no safe dose. We're just going to have to live with that. I'm not here to preach or demand you swear off alcohol forever on the spot. Decisions made on an emotional high after watching scary videos rarely last past the following Friday. We live in the real world, where alcohol is deeply woven into our culture, our social bonds, and our rituals for winding down. But if you're not ready to become a monk, you need to minimize the risks and take control of the damage you're doing to your body. And there's a clear, practical protocol for that. First, calculate your actual weekly intake. Use this formula. Volume of the drink in milliliters, multiplied by its alcohol percentage, divided by 100, then multiplied by 0.8. That gives you the pure grams of ethanol. A 12% ABV glass of wine is about 14.5 grams of pure alcohol. A can of beer is about 20 grams. A shot of vodka is about 16 grams. Second, identify your risk zone. Up to 100 grams of pure ethanol per week means elevated risk, but it's still considered moderate. If you don't have any underlying conditions, your body can typically compensate for that damage. Over 200 grams per week puts you in the danger zone, where the risk of myocardial fibrosis and atrial fibrillation becomes statistically significant. Over 350 grams per week is outright accelerated self-destruction. Third, monitor markers of hidden damage. A standard checkup won't catch these. Every 6 months, get 3 specific lab tests. First, gamma-GT, GGT. It's a liver enzyme and the most sensitive indicator of alcohol overload. Normal range for men is up to 50 units per liter. Second, mean corpuscular volume, MCV, from a complete blood count. Alcohol increases red blood cell size. If your MCV is above 98 femtoliters, your vascular system is chronically stressed by ethanol. Third, carbohydrate-deficient transferrin, CDT. This is the gold standard in evidence-based medicine for detecting regular alcohol use over the past 2 weeks. If your level is above 1.3%, it's time for alarm bells. And absolutely get an echocardiogram once a year to catch left ventricular dilation in its earliest stages. Fourth, adopt 3 simple harm reduction tactics. The 002 rule. Have at least 2 completely sober days in a row each week, not a single sip. That's enough time for your cardiomyocyte mitochondria and endothelial cells to kickstart regeneration and restore nitric oxide synthesis. The 1 glass of water rule. Between each alcoholic drink, drink 1 250 milliliter glass of plain, still water. This mechanically lowers the peak concentration of acetaldehyde in your blood, protects your glycocalyx from chemical burns, and cuts your total alcohol intake for the evening by roughly 40%. The 20-day rule. 4 times a year, take a complete break from alcohol for 20 days. In that time, your liver gets a chance to regenerate at the cellular level, your blood pressure returns to a healthy physiological range, and the receptors in your brain regain their sensitivity to natural pleasure hormones, dopamine, and serotonin. You'll notice your sleep becomes deeper and more restorative, that morning sluggishness fades away, and simple, everyday things start bringing you joy again without chemical stimulation. The real challenge isn't to swear off alcohol under threat of death, but to learn how to relax and enjoy life without it. Find your own alternative, a contrast shower, an intense workout, a walk in the woods. What we need is to flush out cortisol, not to fill our veins with solvent. The choice is always yours. I'm not here to tell you how to live. My goal is to give you the precise mechanisms and numbers that the wine industry is hiding from you. Now you have the facts. How you use that knowledge, that's your responsibility.